Consciousness. It might just be the biggest mystery science has left to solve. I mean, we can map every single neuron firing in the brain with incredible detail, but we're still stuck on one huge question. How does all that biological, electrical chaos swirling around in our heads feel like anything from the inside? Why is there this first-person movie constantly playing just for you? This is the absolute heart of the puzzle we're going to unpack today.
And yeah, there's a name for this. Philosophers and scientists call this incredible gap between the physical brain and our private, subjective world the hard problem. So how do we even begin to tackle this? Well, we're going to walk through a really fascinating new framework that tries to build a bridge across that very gap. We're going to look at how the brain gets organized, find the secret ingredient that creates a self, and land on a pretty stunning conclusion that experience is meaning.
Okay, so here's the puzzle, right? Our current theories are amazing at explaining what the brain does, how it crunches data, controls our bodies, all that stuff. But they really stumble when you ask why all that number crunching feels like something, why it comes with a first-person point of view. There's this huge gap between the objective machine and the feeling of being you.
All right, to even start building that bridge, we need the right toolkit. And the theory we're digging into today starts by making three really critical distinctions, and they kind of change how you see the whole problem.
First up, we've got to separate the stuff from the message. The physical representation, that's the actual neurons firing, the silicon in a computer chip, or the ink on a page. It's the physical stuff. But the information is the abstract pattern that stuff is carrying. The pattern of ones and zeros can be on a chip or a hard drive. The information is the same. It doesn't care what it's made of.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. There's a third layer, and this one is absolutely key: meaning. It's not the ink on the page, and it's not just the abstract pattern of the letters. It's what the story is about. It's the significance, the feeling, why it matters to the person reading it. That's the layer where consciousness happens.
So how in the world does the brain take all that chaos and turn it into a coherent thought? Well, this framework introduces a concept called Constraint Resonance Emergence Theory, or just CRET for short. The easiest way to think about it is like a recipe for how complex systems create order out of nowhere with no one in charge. So this recipe has three basic steps. First, you've got constraints. Imagine a riverbed that channels water. These constraints shape what's even possible for brain activity to do. Then you have resonance. This acts like an amplifier, boosting patterns that work well together and making them stick. And what you get in the end is a metastable organization, a pattern that's stable enough to be a coherent thought, but flexible enough to change into the next one.
Now, CRET gives us this amazing model for how information gets pulled together and stabilized in the brain. It totally explains unity and coherence. But, and this is a big but, it still leaves us with this massive question. Why should that organized pattern feel like anything at all?
And that brings us to the real heart of this whole idea. The argument is that just having organized information isn't enough. There's a missing piece, a structural ingredient you need to go from just cold, impersonal data to a warm, personal experience.
Just think about it for a second. Science can explain how your brain pieces together the sight of a coffee cup, the smell of the coffee, and the warmth in your hand. But that description is missing someone crucial, isn't it? For whom is all that information being brought together? Who is sitting at the center of that experience? The answer, this paper argues, is something called self-indexed modeling. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. For information to become an experience, it has to be organized around a reference point that is the system itself. It's like your brain's map doesn't just show the territory, it also has a little blinking dot that says, "You are here." That blinking dot, that's the for me factor.
Okay, so now let's put the pieces together. We have this organized, coherent information, and we have this self-reference perspective. When you combine those two ingredients, you get the theory's big claim about what conscious experience actually is.
And here it is. Conscious experience isn't just raw data. It isn't just neural activity. It is meaning. To be specific, it's the meaning that pops into existence when information gets organized, stabilized, and, crucially, anchored to a self. This totally flips the script on how we think about perception. You're not experiencing a little video of the world inside your skull. What you're actually experiencing is a rich, dynamic, living model of what the world means to you from your perspective right now. The richness of your experience is the richness of its meaning.
And this opens up a really wild, mind-bending idea.
the lingua franca hypothesis. Get this, what if meaning itself is a kind of universal language? The theory proposes that our spoken languages, or mathematics, or art, they don't create meaning. They're just different tools, different interfaces we use to tap into this shared fundamental domain of meaning that's already there.
So let's zoom out. What are the big takeaways here? Well, first, this whole theory reframes the hunt for consciousness. We should stop looking for some special consciousness stuff in the brain and start looking at its organizational structure. It also explains how you can have a unified perspective without needing some little man in your head watching a screen. And it places consciousness squarely in the natural world, while also showing that meaning is something more fundamental than the words we use for it.
And that leaves us with one last really big thought to chew on. If our most direct connection to the world, our conscious experience, is fundamentally made of structured meaning, what does that tell us about the relationship between our own minds and the very fabric of reality? It suggests the hard problem might not be about finding a missing piece, but about understanding a structure we've been looking at all along.